So, hello everybody, here I'm back again, this time as I've promised for a very long time with Ran. This is the Battle of Nunobeyama, and I've set it now up completely, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here so that you can see this a little better. Actually, I'm going to move the camera a little bit. Basically, what you can see here is the setup before the first activation. All the contingents at the moment are inactive. So each contingent has been given an inactive marker by me. And this question of being active or inactive is actually one of the things that we need to understand before we can actually play this game, because every play turn, all contingents are inactive unless they are in a certain proximity of enemy units. So seeing as this is the beginning, the very, very beginning of the battle, the enemy lines are very far apart, so this condition isn't met. So in order for us to now start playing, we have to first determine who is going to be the phasing player. I did a die roll in my previous video at the very end, and Mori won out. So Mori is now the phasing player, and Amako up here in the north is the person who will be the non-phasing player. And what we need to understand is that as the non-phasing player, Amako gets to go first in the first step of the battle. And what now happens is each player has a so-called Sotaisho. This is a Sotaisho chit. It's Amako. And the Sotaisho is something like the overall general. Alright? So, on the Sotaisho marker you can see a couple of figures down here. The one in the middle is the so-called initiative rating, which we don't need right at the moment. And the one on the right is the contingent activation number, which is very important for this next step that we're going to take. And then on the three down here would be the number of trumps possible. So I'm not going to go into any details around the Busho versus Sotaisho activations, because in this particular battle there are no Busho, and the Sotaisho are the only ones that can issue orders. And also, in addition, the Sotaisho in this battle remain, it makes sense for them to remain in the Honjin, which is basically their little enclosure where they kind of reside. And there is no in-command, out-of-command rule in this particular battle, because the battle is so small and the battlefield is so small. So basically, this Sotaisho can activate up to 4 contingents. So he's got 4 points that he can expend, this right number down here. So now the player needs to decide which of the contingents of the Amako clan he wants to activate. Interestingly enough, there are only 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So he can now activate all of them, which is what I'm going to do, because at this stage there is no reason not to activate them. So I'm going to just flip these markers here. Flip. Flip. So all of these contingents are now activated, and they are now active. So this is the end of the activation phase for the non-phasing player. Now here we have the phasing player, our friend Mori, and he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 contingents, but his actual contingent activation figure is only 5. So now I have to make a decision which 5 to activate. And this is not too hard because I've got one contingent which only consists of one person or one unit really, and that is this Sugihae, Sugihaea. And this is only one unit, so I'm not going to activate them. I'm just going to activate everybody else up to the number of 5. The Mori are going to be activated 1, 2, 3, 4, Kikawa, Shishido, Mori, Oskasawara, and Fukubara. So now they are all active, and now the Busho, which in this case is the Sota Isho himself, can start issuing orders. And in this particular case, usually the Busho can only can only issue orders for his particular contingent, because each contingent usually has a Busho. Seeing as this is not the case here, Mori can order all active contingents, just like Amako could. But if he then wants to have the momentum phase, he can only then issue one more round of orders to only one contingent. So this is important to note. So I'm going to put down the camera here to give me a little more freedom of movement. Okay, so and if you say, okay, if you're reading the rules and you go, what is she doing? Actually, these are special rules that only apply to this particular scenario. So it says here, the Sota Isho can give orders to all units in active contingents. If the Sota Isho is in his Honjin, as he is, all his units are considered in command. If he's not there, command range rules apply. Momentum. The Sota Isho is used for momentum, but only if in his Honjin, which is the case. However, if momentum is attained, only units in one contingent may be given orders. So we can now take the next phase, which is, if you're following the rules, I don't know, do I have the number here? Well, we're now in the move and fire phase. So basically everyone can move up to their movement allowance. So if we look at, I hope that you can see these guys. Yeah. If we look at this particular, contingent, Fukubara, they can move the infantry, the foot soldiers can move up to 4, and here we have KBB, which is the cavalry, and they have, in this case, bows with them. So they can move up to 7. Now, what you will also note is that it looks like units don't really are not really put together based on what they can do. So basically, what kind of a weapon battalion you belong to, but they are all organized according to clan affiliation. So this is why you have contingents that consist of different types of weapons, rather than and are simply aligned because they happen to belong to the same clan, which is why you have quite an assortment here. You have SI, which stands for Samurai Infantry. They are heavy infantry. You have AS, which is Ashigaru. They're non-samurai infantry, and they usually carry a really, really long spear. Then you have the AST, which is Ashigaru, and T stands for, let's see that I pronounce this correctly, I think it's Teppo or Tepe, I'm not quite sure. Anyway, these guys actually have something that is like a musket, if you will. They use firearms, which was even at that time in the 16th century quite unusual. It wasn't really something that was done a lot, you know. Okay, so now I'm going to move these guys, and the idea is, as you may remember from the last video, that Mori needs to come from down here and go up to here and storm the castle. So the best way of trying to do this is to actually start moving northwest. So these guys are now going to move northwest. The terrain is not really that big a problem. We've got a couple of light woods here. This is all normal level. Well, the lowest level is level 0. Do they start at level 1? I don't know. And we have to cross this river. Now, if we look at this, it's a minor river, and in order for us to cross it, we have to pay a +2 on our movement. All of us. So we move forward. These guys can move up to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're not crossing here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to stay here. Well, probably we're going to move one more. 6. Okay, so these ones have now moved. Now, if they had come into range that they could fire at these guys, which they can't because these guys are out of range, they could also have fired. If they had incurred reaction fire, which they didn't because these guys are armed with bows. Can you see them? Let's move this a little bit. These guys up here are armed with bows. But in order for these guys to incur reaction fire, they would have to have moved into the zones of control of this group, which they have not, because the zones of control, I hope I have a picture in the rules somewhere for you. Okay. Well, no, there isn't really a nice picture. So basically, the zones of control, for those of you who have played these games, this kind of game before, the zones of control for these would be where I put the marks now. These two would be zones of control. So if they had moved in here, then they would have incurred fire. Okay. So this is number 1. Now we have to check for reaction movement. Reaction facing. Infantry versus infantry can have reaction movement and facing if, and now we have to check. Let's see, facing was number page 13. No, I thought I'd seen something about within 2 hexes, but that doesn't seem to be the case here. So these guys will just, keep looking south directly, and they will not make a facing change like this to face these guys coming. Okay, so now we're going to move these guys as well down here. They have a very long way to go, these guys. So let's start moving. They have a 4 movement allowance of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they're all across the river now. And there isn't much they can do because they're still too far away. Then we're going to send Kikawa down, or actually up, I should say. Come on. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we're going to send Shishido. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then finally Mori is going to make their move. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. And this guy's going to change facing. And I think facing change is free if you do it for 1 vertex. 1, so that's not a movement point. 1, 2. It's going to change movement again. Okay, now as you can see, the fact that we have different, really very different types of units with very different movement allowances makes moving them really difficult, because if you want to keep them together, which you would have to do if you had a busho with them, because otherwise some of them would be out of command, you really need to slow down so that even the ones that have a very high movement rating, like the cavalry, and for example here, the Kikawa cavalry here has a movement of 6, but they still have to wait for these guys with a 4 to catch up. Otherwise, the busho would be split between these two. So as you can see, this means that you're quite limited in what you can do. Now, we've now finished the initial movement and fire phase. No firing has happened. Next, we would be engaging in shock combat if we can, but the enemy is so far away that there is nothing really we can do. So what we're now going to do is we're now going to see, can we keep momentum, which means that we can actually issue one more set of orders. So for this, we roll a die, and it's 7. Sorry, can't see this. I rolled a 7. And we compare this to the initiative rating, in this case, of Mori, which is 5. which is 4. So basically we have now not really managed to keep initiative. So now it is Marco's turn. He now gets to first do a movement phase and fire phase if applicable, and next then also to engage in shock combat. But again, he can only use his active contingents. Now,